like some wide-eyed dreamer.
Welcome back to OUA Today, everyone. Marshall Ferguson here alone in studio. No Scott. No Amanda. But I am joined on the phone by a man who, this past week at the CFL Evaluation Camp while he was there, decided that he needed to show off how big his pecs are because he's Justin Dunk strong. Justin, 9 reps. What the hell?
Is that good or bad, do you think?
That's amazing. I don't know if I ever did 2.
Well, you see, I got challenged on Twitter by, actually, the Ticats beat writer, Drew Edwards. He said over under 1, so I thought, I didn't want it to blow up into this big thing. I was going to shoot this little video and just tweet it at him so we could see it, right? And
right.
It ends up blowing up, and the guys on the CFL website are like,
hey, this is really good.
this is kind of cool. Let's make this into a CFL Snap post on their other blog site. And I thought, I guess, you want to have some fun with it, whatever. And then it kind of turned into this thing that exploded a little bit. I had no intention of doing it, but I was trying to get 10, I'll be honest. I wanted to get 10.
Oh, I know you were trying to get 10 because halfway through the video when you get to 7, you go, yeah, I got 10. And that was the best part for me. You're just talking about it right now. It makes me think, the NFL has Run Rich Run, which I know you were in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. Why not each year have bench, dunk, bench?
Yeah, we could see if you can up the total every year, but man, I feel like as I get older, that's going to be so hard to do,
Old man strength. Old man strength. I remember Mike DeCroce threw a guy out of bounds from Carleton in his last year, and the guy was like some freakishly strong first year that looked jacked, and DeCroce just looked like a little boy. And he threw him out of bounds, like stiff-armed him and threw him. And then I guess the guy, DeCroce told me the story, I guess a year and a half ago. He said the guy went, what the hell was that? And DeCroce just turned around and went, old man strength, brother.
Classic, man. I like it.
Yeah. All right. You were at eCamp. That's why I wanted to have you on, aside from being the coolest guy I know. And I found a scratching post. You're talking about Drew Edwards and Steve Melton talking about things. I found a post on them a couple of years ago. Said, while this weekend's Canadian Football League Combine will largely be about numbers, 40-yard dash times, bench press reps, vertical leaps, the most meaningful results won't appear on a spreadsheet or website. Instead, team interviews and one-on-one drills are likely to have a much bigger impact on the eventual fate of the 53 draft-eligible players looking to impress CFL coaches and front office staffers in Toronto. My question for you, Justin, after being there, what is the purpose of the CFL eCamp?
Yeah, see, I think it's different for each and every guy, Marshall. Now, I know that's not the easy answer, the kind of general answer you're looking for, but I think it really depends on the individual player. So I think the purpose varies from guy to guy. I think for players that maybe have some question marks about how they are as a teammate and how dedicated they are to football, interviews are the most important. And I think for a guy like Jake Hardy pops to mind, a receiver out of Calgary, who had his athleticism questioned. I think, some of these testing drills are important because, you talk to scouts around the league and general managers, and they talk about that there's an athletic threshold that these athletes need to be at to play in the CFL. And you can see it when some of these later round picks get into, a CFL preseason game. At the end of the game, and they're against these American guys, and not that I don't think passports matter a whole lot to me when we're talking some of the top-end guys, but
right.
When we're talking back into the roster and some of these later-round picks, this year's a totally different draft because it's so deep, but you can see the difference athletically, and that's what I've learned over the years is a lot of that scouts are looking for a body type and a type of an athlete that they can coach. And, in one way, I understand that, and in another way, it's kind of sad because you see a guy like a John Surla who, he was a later round pick and got a chance, and we both know how great a linebacker he was on the field at Western. He maybe doesn't get the chance that he should based on his football production. So I think, in a roundabout way, it just totally varies on guy to guy.
I will never forget John Surley getting called out in that documentary they made of him in the meeting room with the Argos at eCamp, just going, so what did you put up for bench? Well, 8. Well, why not more? Well, I went down to Florida. So you went down to Florida and you got 8 reps. Yeah. Well, why? Well, I don't know. Like, it was back and forth, and it kind of gave you a sense of the intensity in some of the meeting rooms that go around. But my idea on the eCamp is, like, we say that the numbers matter, but they don't really matter, and there's different needs for each kind of person going in because scouts need to see different things. But the one-on-ones, you have a very small sample size to be able to prove yourself. Like, I know some of the O-line, D-line one-on-ones and the route running, I think correct me if I'm wrong, the receivers get somewhere between 3 to 6 reps maximum, right?
Yeah, it's not very much at all. You might get a few more than that if you're willing to jump up and maybe not rest a little bit in between reps, or if the coaches want to match up and they put you out there. But yeah, you're not getting likely more than 10 reps.
Yeah, it's scary to think that your evaluation will be based off of that small of a sample size. Now, again, Mayock always talks to the NFL Combine about going back to the tape. Well, I saw this guy, his one-on-ones were great, this and that were great. I got to go back to the tape. That's all it really teaches you. I think that's the takeaway that I get from all of these different eCamp statistics and the facts that people are coming out with about, hey, this guy did this and this is amazing, is just go back to the tape and find out what he's like as a football player, because I'm going to get into that a little bit later here in the show, about my kind of views on the eCamp and its place in terms of scouting and all of that. But I think that that's kind of where it's at. What's the weirdest interview question you've heard out of a CFL interview room?
Oh, man. It's almost funny that as the years go by and I cover the event each year, the questions get kind of more boring and boring.
Yeah.
In a way.
You're a seasoned vet, Justin.
Yeah, but you would think that each year some teams throw out some different things, but I guess the weirdest one I heard the first couple of years covering the Combine was, would you rather be a cat or a dog, and why? And that might not be the weirdest question that people would think you would get, but I would like to know why the team is asking that and what they get from that, but I don't think you'll ever find that out.
Yeah, again, there's some weird ones out there. I've heard that that's kind of a typical one, but yeah, if you answer cat, is there any way that goes well for you?
Oh, well, I think so, because it's just about explaining why you pick the cat. I can see
if you can explain it, that's more important than what you chose. Okay,
exactly, for having cat-like reflexes. Or actually,
okay.
Pops to mind. Jordan Yance was asked, the quarterback from Manitoba, was asked in one of his interviews this weekend what he would do on a night if he took his girlfriend out for a night on the town. So that's something you.
Hey, let's keep the girlfriends out of this CFL.
Yeah, but if I'm sitting there, that would throw me for a loop. So, yeah, there's some interesting ones. But to be honest, it really just seems like the teams really generally want to get to know a guy a little bit, and then maybe they'll get into some of those questions like Surla got from the Argos. They're known for being kind of vicious, and that's it.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And the idea that if you get asked that question, I just love the fact that guys would clearly just say things in interviews that are not who they are in order to get positive feedback. Like, if I went out with my girlfriend, we would drink 4 liters of water in order to maintain proper homeostasis inside our bloodstream, and then we would probably be in bed by 9:30, and we'd wake up by 6 and go to the gym together. That's a perfect night for me. It's like, no, that's not what your real answer is, Jordan. That's you live in Manitoba. You get to do all sorts of fun things at night. That's all good. You go to the Jets games and scream random things at Joe Thornton and different people. That's what your job is. The question for you I have next is Canadian quarterbacks, which again is a worn out one, and again as a seasoned vet you're probably tired of answering as an ex-quarterback, and now I'm an old man media ex-quarterback like you, so might as well go through with each other real quick. Andrew Buckley, Heck Crichton Award winner, 4.7 440, 4.47 shuttle, 7.31 3-cone drill. Why does the CFL keep inviting quarterbacks to eCamp when we know there's no chance of any of them getting signed or having a serious look? Because we're being evaluated against some of our peers. They only invite 2 to the actual eCamp, and they're basically arms. But if they're just arms, just say that they're arms and don't dress them up and make them test and do everything else.
Yeah, but the CFL is never going to say that for PR reasons, right? And in recent years, some of the guys that have shown up have gotten chances. A Brad Sinopoli, a Danny Brannigan,
Brad's a good one.
A Kyle Quinlan right there at McMaster. So I don't think they're necessarily just an arm. And I think it's a good experience, even if they're maybe not being looked at seriously. But you never know, because those 3 quarterbacks have had a chance. And for me, Andrew Buckley threw the ball very well. And you hear some whispers around the league, about teams liking him and teams liking Jordan Yance because of his size. But the problem, the issue at the heart of this problem is with the Canadian quarterback is that they don't count towards the ratio at all. And you have so many American coaches, and for whatever reason, they think that bringing up that guy from a Division III school and letting him develop is a better idea than bringing in a Canadian quarterback. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons is because of the media. Because when that Canadian kid is on your roster, like a Danny Brannigan, and talking to some CFL people about Danny when he was on that Toronto roster. It was questions about him every single day because that was back in the Cleo Lemon days. and Danny couldn't get a sniff at that point. So it's about that they just don't count towards a ratio. I've had teams say, well, if we dress a Canadian quarterback, we should have an extra designated import spot, or, we should make a spot for a Canadian and allow a team to carry a Canadian quarterback on the roster that does not count towards your number all year and doesn't count towards a salary cap, and he can make the minimum salary in the CFL, which is $50,000, and had that time to develop. And I've been told there's a few teams that would do that. So I think it's finding the right rule to allow a Canadian quarterback in the league, and even though it shouldn't matter. Like, my example this year is Brandon Bridge, and I know this is a long-winded answer, but Brandon Bridge is one of the top-ranked, depending on the site you look on or the guys you trust or the scouts you talk to, he's the 6th-ranked quarterback in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So clearly they're not looking at his passport. Now, it's a stretch. I've had it suggested to me from CFL scouts that Brandon Bridge would be looked at as a receiver north of the border when he's the 6th-ranked guy in the NFL. So, when I think about that, it doesn't make any sense. And as a former Canadian quarterback like you, it frustrates me to no end.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why I brought up the question and framed it like that. Is I wish that we all had an equal opportunity and we had a reason to drive and to strive for these things. But I didn't go to CFL evaluation camps. I was invited to the Toronto regional one. And I told the CFL that I would go and I would throw because I love football. I love throwing the ball. I love being around talented receivers. But I know you guys aren't taking a realistic look at me. So why would I want to do all of the testing? So I didn't do any of the tests. And that might be a bad perspective on it. And you can say whatever you want about that. But with the current situation the way it is, unless we make changes like you just talked about, there's really no drive for a guy like me to try and crush myself to get through that stage to make the league. And that's my opinion. And I'm sure I'll have people that'll disagree with that and in any way they can. But my thing with Buckley is, like you're talking about guys liking him, he can spin it. He's athletic. He's been a winner at Calgary under a questionable circumstance where Blake Neal might have been headed out the door. Yet he has all of these intangibles. He's a great player. If there was one guy who was going to get a look, it seems like every year we go, oh, this is the guy. He might get a chance. And then nothing. Like there's always this hype in spring. And then when May comes, it's like, oh, he got invited to a camp. And then it's like, oh yeah, he got sent home second week of June because that's what's supposed to happen is what a lot of people think. I just find that very frustrating like you do. But we'll move on to Chris Aki here. He was you put out a thing saying he was a kind of a combine monster. Vertical 40 inches, broad 10 feet 11 inches, 3 cone 709, 40 467. Comparables you think for Chris Aki in the league right now? The ones I could think of were kind of a Mike Edom and an Andrew Liu mixture. Do you think that's accurate or?
Yeah, I think it's right in there, and it's interesting because Aki talked about, being a Mike Edom type. Now, Mike Edom was a little faster and maybe had a little bit more of a burst in some of those testing drills, but Chris Aki is bigger than Mike was at the combine, because I remember the question about Edom was, well, is he big enough? And it turns out that he's put on the weight and he's just fine. And those guys to me seem very similar. Andrew Liu, he's a little bit different. I don't think he has kind of that same type of body and maybe the same type of burst. But I think he's more of a Mike Edom in recent times anyways. And Chris Aki, man, is a freak. I had an idea that he would put up, some good numbers, but I was very curious to see his 40 because he ran in the 4.9s at the 2014 East-West Bowl.
Yeah.
So I knew that was going to be a big event for him coming in, as whatever your perception is of the 40. These scouts, they put some importance in it because all the American guys can come in and they can put down good time. So Chris running that 4.6 was very big for him. He came out in linebacker drills that he admitted he's never done before, and he was beating guys off the line in pass rush drills, getting to the quarterback with ease. He was running the bag drills and all the different types of individual drills they did with linebackers. He just looked so smooth. And as a DB moving around out there, in the 215-pound range like he is, you don't even think that he weighs that much because he moves. He's so light on his feet, man. Like, I think Chris Aki put himself in the first round with what he did at the Combine.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just talked with Shelby Blackley from the court up at Laurier there, and we talked a little bit about him because she has some personal experience. And I said, when he was down here in the preseason, I thought he looked like he was 230 pounds. He weighed in at 208 this past weekend. Like, he moves like a guy that weighs 180 and looks like he's 230 and he's 208, right? Like and I think the versatility that you find in a defensive back linebacker mixture like that is what every single defensive coordinator in the CFL wants, because then you have the ability to throw a guy at Sam, then he can drop back to free safety, he can rotate, he can slide out to the flats, he can do everything.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost the case of, in Hamilton there, you look at Craig Butler, he maybe didn't have the measurables that Chris Aki or Mike Ian does, but that's something that Craig Butler was able to do out in Saskatchewan. Now he's more of a free safety in Hamilton, but he has the ability to come down in the box and play at that will linebacker spot as well.
Yeah, he was a very special talent. And again, another guy like that's trying to kind of become like that next step to Craig Butler would be Mike Daly, right? That came out of here. He's trying to become kind of that thicker body, rotationary type guy that can be a part of it. Also, I got to mention, I sent out a tweet that Justin was joining the show while I had him on. Being the consummate professional he is, he retweets it during the show. Yeah, I know you were only on Tim and Sid once, but I had to give you horns just because I missed them already, and it's only Monday. It's the first day. It's the first day without Tim and Sid. Justin, I literally have no idea what I'm going to do from 1 to 4 today.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Normally, I work a lot at night at Sportsnet, so normally during the day when I'm working away on my articles or whatever, I got Tim and Sid on in the background. So today, I do know Greg Brady and Andrew Walker. They do on the radio show, but yeah, it feels like something's missing.
I know it does, doesn't it? And it's, again, Tim is our guy, and I love Sid in every way. I think Sid's amazing as well. But I just don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't know if you're like this too, but I found this yesterday when I was preparing this radio show that you're listening to right now on CFMU 93.3, is that I was uncomfortable without having either a podcast or a game on in the background. Like I turned on the Duke Gonzaga game while I was working on the show prep, just for the sake of having a voice. Like, are you a guy like that? Because I know you've been a sports head like me for a long, long time.
Yeah, I always like to have something going on. I mean, every day I make sure I have my NFL Insiders on, or Pass the Draft, or a podcast like you. Just something that I feel like I'm picking up info as I'm working. Are
you a big basketball guy too? You have any interest in basketball?
Yeah, totally. I mean, at Sportsnet doing the highlights, you have to know every single sport. So, and when we were back at the Score, man, we were huge for doing college basketball and doing it as much as we could. And they loved the NBA over there. We had court cuts and we had court surfing. So you got to be into your ball, especially at the Score. The guys that came out of there that have gone on to become the starters that were the Basketball Jones, the drop that they put out on Friday is the highlight of my week. Every single week. If you're listening to this and you're a hoops head like Justin and I, and you want some quality basketball laughs, just look up the starters and listen to the drop. It's a podcast they put out every Friday. All right, let's do a couple of quick hitters here. It'll get you out on time. You've been very gracious with your time, and I'm sure you're very tired from following around all these CIS athletes all weekend. So, the Tavon Campbell that ran the 4:35 electronic time, what is a guy like that from Toronto doing in Regina for university? Oh, that's a great question. How do you let him get out of the city?
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the problem with the U of T program down there. But oh my, you knew he was going to run fast. But most importantly, and I said this in my recap video on CFL.ca, he translated it onto the field. Had the only interception of the day in the one-on-ones. Showed he can cover. Teams are looking at him as a legitimate starter at the field corner spot. Yeah, it was a pretty good pick too. I actually watched that video and saw. Ho-hum, another Laval offensive lineman in the top 5. Is that where we're headed for with Danny Grew? Yeah, certainly, man. This guy was awesome in the one-on-ones. I could see Danny Grew getting an NFL shot. I mean, I was there last year and watched David Foucault, and he won a number of reps in a row, and Dylan Ainsworth kind of caught him on one and ran him over. And I think Danny Grew is almost a little more polished at this point than David Foucault. So the situation that Carolina Panthers were in last year with their offensive line was pretty dire, but I could see Danny Grew getting an NFL shot. Yeah, definitely. Who is this year's CFL Quadzilla? Ooh, Quadzilla. Wow, you're putting me on the spot here.
Hey, I listened to the show. Okay, I know what you're interested in.
Wow, man. There are some big guys. Quadzilla. I don't want to say there was a guy at the CFL Combine that was like Quadzilla, because Quadzilla at the NFL Combine was in a category all on his own. So I'll maybe leave that one alone for the CFL guys. You got to be in a certain category, if you know what I mean. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I was looking for like the skinny, weak-legged white guy like me that you could just say he was the CFL equivalent of the Quadzilla, but that's okay. How crazy is Archambault's shuttle time put in perspective with the other linebackers? Yeah, that was impressive, because the book on Archambault coming in was, this film was good. He has good football sense, and you wanted to see what he could be as an athlete in some of these athletic tests. So for him to be able to put that shuttle time down shows that he can move side to side, and I think more importantly what it shows is that he's started to change his body, and he still needs to continue to do so. He needs to get down weight to be able to move around on this big field in the CFL.
Yeah, completely agree. What was your best test aside from bench? Because we clearly know you broke Guelph records when you were there after watching that video from the weekend. What was your best test when you were at Guelph?
Wow. When I was at Guelph, when we did testing at Guelph, or when I was at the Combine?
Either. You can look at either, but I want to know the one that, like, I know for me, shuttle, because I sucked at every single other test, was like, yeah, this is my thing.
Yeah, see, my personal favorite at Guelph was when we did our weight testing, when we did hang cleans. For whatever reason, I feel like that's a more explosive lift than even doing bench, because your whole body's involved in there's a lot of explosiveness there rather than just sitting down on the bench and, popping the bar off your chest,
right.
You know what I mean? So I really like hang cleans when we got into that testing, because our requirement for the 1,000-pound club was bench, squat, and clean.
Yep.
And I always love doing the cleans for whatever reason. I know that's not a normal combine test, but I'll go with that one.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And again, you were a pretty explosive guy when you played before you hit old age, so no. Last one for you, and I'll try not to make this too long of an answer, but Guelph uniforms. You're on the show. I wanted to give you a chance to kind of speak your piece in 30 seconds or less, we'll say.
Yeah, and man, I feel bad because I didn't get to join the show on that when DJ was on. See, my issue with this whole thing is that the CIS in general, and I just don't want to go the OUA route, but they need to grow the game and get better. And if anything, what Guelph was doing was putting a name out there and getting a name out there and just building a brand. I mean, I've said this to a number of people. If a student athlete was going to the University of Guelph because they had 6 cool helmets and 7 wicked jerseys and all these different pant combinations, then that's not the type of guy that you want going to your school. But
right.
It's just a part of the package, and I honestly really don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, Greg Marshall seemed to have no problem with it down at Western, and, Carleton, they were starting to have some different uniform combinations and starting to go that way too. I think there was totally nothing wrong with that. I honestly don't understand the decision from the OUA standpoint, because I think it's all about growing this game, growing this product, man. And me and you have both obviously played it and loved the CIS University experience, and I want to see the game get back on national TV. And now, I'm not saying uniforms do that. I'm just saying the thinking behind outlawing it does that in terms of limiting yourself. You should never be limiting yourself in any respect if you're a CIS football program, I believe.
Yeah, that's good to hear from you, because I know you're a guy that has direct effect with that. But we'll get you out of here on that. You've been very gracious with your time, and I need to get angry about something and do a Sid rant right now, so I'll let you go. Okay, Justin?
Awesome, Marshall. Appreciate you having me on, man.
No problem. Look forward to having you back soon. Thanks, brother.
Cheers.
Justin Dunk of all sorts of stuff, CFL.ca, among his work.